We traveled to Venice on our latest trip, and as you approach the town on the train, Venice rises up out of the water. And once you reach the train station, that's the last of the modern transportation you'll have. From that point on, you're walking around a city on the water. You're taking water taxis, you're walking over bridges, you're using gondolas. And it can be quite a struggle walking over some of those bridges. They can be steep, and if you're carrying suitcases, it's a bit of a struggle. But you also get into a close-knit city with narrow streets that are only used by pedestrians. The city becomes crowded and close very quickly, and then we'll open up to an area where there's nothing but canal and bridge, and you're just by yourself in that one moment. But it doesn't take long for it to get very crowded again. And they have to do everything on these streets by hand. Of course, you can also enjoy a gondola ride and go just about anywhere. And enjoy a gondola ride is exactly what we did. We jumped on a gondola on the Grand Canal and very quickly come up to the Rialto Bridge. This is the fourth Rialto Bridge at this location, and it has a spectacular view of the Grand Canal. The bridge is wide. There are actually shops in the middle, and it's very ornate. It has very interesting masonry work on the sides, and if you're up on the bridge, you get a remarkable view of the canal itself. As you continue through the canals of Venice on a gondola, there are many interesting sights, such as this prison. Our gondolier gave us a wonderful history lesson about the area. The prison is located right next to the famous Rialto fish market. And as you get off on the side canals, you learn that there's 117 islands that make up Venice, and there are over 400 bridges connecting these islands. Every time you cross the bridge, you move from one island to the next. There are many interesting places in Venice, such as this was the residence of Marco Polo. This house coming up here on the left was where Goethe wrote the Italian Journey. As you come back out onto the Grand Canal, you see a hotel. This was the hotel that George Clooney married in a few years ago. For more information about our Venice gondola ride, on our YouTube page you'll see another video dedicated exclusively to the gondola ride, so make sure you check that out. Immediately after we were at Venice was Carnival. And as you can see, this shop sells the masks and capes and so forth that many people wear during the festival. As I mentioned, each time you cross the bridge, you move to a new island, and each island has its own church, many times with a bell tower. And so as you move around Venice, you see all these churches, with each just a little different than the previous, and sometimes you can kind of trace the timeline of the city by the changes in the design of the churches. They're just miraculous to see. For instance, this church is St. Mary of the Miracles. This church is made entirely out of Italian marble, both interior and exterior. It was exquisite to see. We did go inside and saw the marvelous interior with the marble. The ceiling is made up of gold filigree and portraits of what I assume were probably wealthy parishioners of the time who contributed to the building of the church. And of course, the church has its own Madonna up on the altar. Wonderful church to visit, and just different than anything we had seen before. As we come over this bridge, we come upon the Scuola Grande di San Marco. The front of this building is a museum, and the back of the building is a hospital. And so when we entered it, we couldn't go past a certain point. But it was interesting to see, if you look at the far end of this picture, you'll see the boat ambulances lined up at the emergency room for the hospital. And right next to it was the Cathedral of St. John and St. Paul. This was another marvelous cathedral. Due to time constraints, we didn't get a chance to go inside, but inside it has a lot of Baroque era artwork and so forth. It's a very large church, as you can see, which was kind of uncommon. A lot of churches were smaller in Venice because of the size constraints, but this was a very nice large church right in the heart of Venice. Jenny and I found this location interesting. We nicknamed this building in front of us the Flatiron of Venice because the canals seem to surround it. And then you have this wonderful canal behind it that's just very peaceful and relaxing. As you come down off of the bridge, this is another fine example of how narrow the alleyways can be in these Venice side streets. This alley went several hundred meters and it was barely wide enough for us to walk through. And spaces were utilized heavily in Venice. As you can see by this picture here, a restaurant took over this alleyway for seating area. And then we found one of the neatest bookstores I think we've ever been in. This was Acqua Alta bookstore. The books are housed, many of them, in gondolas that they have sitting in the aisleways. And you can see here, even this bookstore is narrow and crowded, but it was a marvelous place to visit. As Venice prepared for Carnival, we noticed that in a lot of the squares, stages and tents and vendors were starting to set up already. And we also noticed as we walked around Venice how much artwork was involved in everything. The cistern, of course, there's always the statues that mark the squares of the important people. But then there was also just interesting things like this painting hanging in an alleyway that almost nobody sees. And these sculptures just sticking out of the side of the building. Just marvelous to see. Once you reach Plaza de San Marco, you see St. Mark's Cathedral. This very ornate cathedral has these wonderful statuary on the roof. There's also all these mosaics over each and every doorway on the front of the cathedral that are just fantastic to see. And of course, the horse statues on the top have become very famous. Also in Piazza San Marco is the Doge Palace. This is the residence of the rulers of Venice for centuries. Um, the palace itself was currently under renovations, and so we didn't get many good pictures of it, but you can see from these few that it's also very ornate and it has interesting tile work. And as you go around the front of the Doge Palace, you come upon the Bridge of Sighs. This was a bridge where the convicted people were led from the Doge Palace over to the prison to await their sentence. There are many interesting sites at Piazza San Marco, as well as St. Mark's Cathedral and the Doge Palace. There's St. Mark's Tower. St. Mark's Clock Tower. The Colonna di San Tordo. And glimpses of other islands and their churches, such as San Giorgio Maggiore. Venice is a fascinating and unique place to visit. We were very happy we made the trip.